The human brain has long been viewed as a static organ, a structure that reaches maturity and then remains largely unchanged for the rest of a person's life. For centuries, this belief created a sense of limitation as though people were trapped by the habits, tendencies, and thought patterns they developed early in life. However, modern neuroscience has completely shifted this understanding by revealing one of the most empowering truths about human potential. The brain is adaptable, flexible, and capable of rewiring itself throughout life. This process, known as neuroplasticity, demonstrates that every thought we think and every action we take has the power to strengthen or weaken certain neural pathways. In practical terms, it means that the mind is not bound by the past. Instead, it is constantly being shaped by what we choose to repeat, practice, and focus on. At the most basic level, neuroplasticity refers to the brain's ability to form new connections between neurons and reorganize existing ones in response to learning, experience, or even injury. Imagine a path in a forest. The more often you walk along that path, the clearer and easier it becomes to travel. Similarly, when you repeatedly engage in a certain thought or behavior, the neural pathway for it becomes stronger, more efficient, and more automatic. Conversely, if a path is neglected, nature begins to cover it, making it harder to follow. In the brain, unused pathways weaken over time, leaving room for new ones to take their place. This adaptability means that change is not only possible but inevitable if we deliberately redirect our mental energy. One of the most striking implications of this science is that even deeply ingrained patterns of thought can be reshaped. For example, someone who has struggled with self-doubt may have reinforced that narrative for years, turning it into a powerful and automatic response to challenges. But through consistent practice of positive affirmations, self-reflection, and reframing negative events, new neural pathways begin to emerge. Over time, these new pathways become the dominant ones, while the old ones lose their strength. The brain is not erasing the old story, rather, it is building a stronger and more empowering one that eventually takes precedence. This demonstrates that changing the mind is not a matter of suppressing what is unwanted, but of cultivating and reinforcing what is desired until it becomes the default way of thinking. Scientific studies have shown that this capacity for change is not limited to the young. While children's brains are indeed more plastic, adults retain the ability to rewire their thinking well into old age. This has profound educational and motivational implications. It means that no matter a person's background, age, or history, they retain the ability to reshape their outlook, habits, and even personality traits. Learning a new skill, overcoming a limiting belief, or adopting a healthier mindset is not only possible but grounded in the biology of the brain itself. In this sense, education is not simply the transfer of information, but the very act of reshaping the brain through exposure to new ideas and practices. Another critical aspect of neuroplasticity is the role of repetition and consistency. Just as one workout does not make a person physically strong, one positive thought does not transform a lifetime of negative thinking. The brain requires repeated exposure to new patterns in order to strengthen those neural connections. This is why disciplines such as meditation, journaling, and deliberate learning are so effective. They provide regular reinforcement that trains the brain to prioritize new ways of thinking. Over time, what once felt unnatural becomes second nature, demonstrating the brain's remarkable capacity to adapt. Beliefs are the invisible architects of human experience. They act as filters through which reality is interpreted, influencing not only how people see the world, but also how they respond to it. At first glance, a belief may seem like a simple thought, something abstract and harmless, but in truth it is far more powerful. A belief functions like a lens. It colors perception, directs attention, and frames decisions. What one person interprets as an opportunity, another might see as a threat, and the difference between those two reactions often comes down to the beliefs each person holds. In this sense, beliefs are not passive ideas that exist in the background. They are active forces that shape the quality of life itself. From an educational perspective, understanding the mechanics of beliefs reveals how much control individuals truly have over their experiences. Beliefs are formed through repetition, authority, and experience. For example, a child who repeatedly hears they are intelligent and capable is likely to internalize a belief in their potential. Conversely, a child who grows up in an environment where their abilities are constantly questioned may adopt a belief in their inadequacy. Both beliefs, once absorbed, tend to persist into adulthood, guiding behavior, influencing risk-taking, and shaping the outcomes people experience. What makes this so critical is that beliefs are often accepted without question. They are treated as truths rather than perspectives. Recognizing that beliefs can be examined, challenged, and altered is the first step toward using them to intentionally design one's reality. One of the most profound insights about beliefs is their self-fulfilling nature. When someone believes success is impossible, they approach challenges with hesitation, expecting failure. This expectation influences their effort, their persistence, and their resilience. Predictably, the results confirm their doubts, reinforcing the original belief. On the other hand, if someone believes that growth and improvement are achievable, they approach challenges with curiosity and determination. Even setbacks are reinterpreted as lessons rather than defeats. The same external event can produce vastly different outcomes depending on the underlying belief structure. Education in this area emphasizes that reality is not only shaped by external conditions, but also by the internal frameworks people carry within their minds. Beliefs also determine the boundaries of what individuals consider possible. History is filled with examples of breakthroughs that only occurred because someone dared to challenge a widely held belief. For centuries, it was believed that human beings could not run a mile in under 4 minutes. This belief acted as a psychological barrier until it was broken. Once one person achieved it, countless others followed soon after, proving that the limitation was never physical but mental. The educational lesson here is clear: when beliefs are shifted, new possibilities emerge, and barriers that once seemed insurmountable lose their power. Changing beliefs, however, is not a matter of simple willpower. It requires awareness, reflection, and deliberate effort. One effective method is to question the origin of a belief. Asking where it came from, who taught it, and whether it serves one's current goals can expose beliefs that were adopted unconsciously or inherited from others. Another approach is to replace limiting beliefs with empowering ones through consistent affirmation and evidence gathering. For instance, if someone believes they are not capable of leadership, they can begin challenging that narrative by recalling moments where they took initiative, made decisions, or influenced others positively. Over time, the brain begins to internalize the new belief, reinforcing it until it becomes natural. Educational psychology highlights the importance of community in this process as well. Beliefs are not formed in isolation. They are reinforced by the environments and people that surround us. Spending time with individuals who embody empowering beliefs makes it easier to adopt those same perspectives. Likewise, immersing oneself in literature, lectures, and learning experiences that challenge old assumptions accelerates the process of transformation. In this sense, changing beliefs is not just an internal exercise, but also an external strategy of deliberately shaping the inputs that reach the mind. Ultimately, the role of beliefs in shaping reality cannot be overstated. They act as silent governors, setting the limits of what people attempt, how they interpret experiences, and the outcomes they ultimately achieve. While circumstances may not always be under one's control, the beliefs carried within the mind are open to examination and transformation. Education empowers individuals to recognize that beliefs are choices, not immutable truths. When one learns to identify limiting beliefs and replace them with ones that align with growth, courage, and possibility, life itself begins to shift. The world may appear more open, opportunities more accessible, and challenges more manageable, not because external reality has changed, but because the internal framework through which it is perceived has been redesigned. The power to change the mind begins here, with the recognition that beliefs are not merely reflections of reality, but active shapers of it. Once this truth is embraced, individuals gain the ability to consciously construct a reality that reflects their highest potential. Decision-making is one of the most fundamental processes of human life. Every choice, from the smallest daily routine to the most significant life-altering decisions, shapes the trajectory of an individual's journey. While some people treat decision-making as a rigid process governed by past experiences and fixed beliefs, research in psychology and education has shown that flexibility of thought, often called cognitive flexibility, plays an essential role in making wise, adaptive, and creative decisions. Cognitive flexibility is the ability to shift perspectives, adapt thinking to new circumstances, and approach problems with openness rather than rigidity. It is a skill that, when developed, transforms not only the quality of decisions, but also the resilience and effectiveness of individuals in navigating life's complexities. At its core, cognitive flexibility is about mental agility. It allows individuals to recognize that situations are rarely one-dimensional and that multiple approaches may lead to a solution. For instance, a rigid thinker might view a career setback as proof of personal inadequacy, while a flexible thinker interprets the same setback as an opportunity to explore alternative paths or develop new skills. The difference lies not in the external event, but in the capacity to reframe and adjust perspectives. Education in this area emphasizes that cultivating flexibility of thought expands the range of choices available and improves the likelihood of making decisions that align with long-term growth. The importance of cognitive flexibility becomes particularly evident in problem solving. Life presents countless situations where the first solution does not work or where conditions suddenly change. A rigid mindset resists these shifts, often clinging to familiar but ineffective approaches. By contrast, individuals with cognitive flexibility are able to step back, reassess the situation, and pivot toward a new strategy. This adaptability is not about abandoning principles or lacking direction. Rather, it is about maintaining a willingness to evolve one's approach in light of new information. In an educational context, students who develop this skill often perform better academically, because they can shift strategies when confronted with challenges, whether it be rethinking how to solve a math problem or adopting a different approach to writing an essay. Decision making also requires balancing logic with creativity, and cognitive flexibility serves as the bridge between the two. Flexible thinkers can draw on analytical skills to assess data and evidence while simultaneously engaging imagination to envision alternative outcomes. For example, in business, leaders with cognitive flexibility do not simply replicate past strategies, they consider emerging trends, experiment with novel approaches, and remain open to feedback. This dual capacity to analyze and innovate is what allows them to make decisions that are not only practical but also forward-looking. In contrast, leaders who are trapped by rigid patterns of thinking often find themselves unprepared for change, unable to respond effectively when conditions shift. From a psychological standpoint, cognitive flexibility also enhances emotional resilience in decision-making. Decisions are rarely free of stress or uncertainty, and rigid thinkers often become paralyzed by fear of failure or frustration when outcomes deviate from expectations. Flexible thinkers, however, are more likely to regulate their emotions, view uncertainty as a natural part of life, and treat setbacks as valuable data for future choices. This mindset reduces the emotional burden of decision making and encourages persistence in the face of obstacles. Education in emotional intelligence underscores this link, teaching that flexibility of thought is not merely a cognitive skill, but also an emotional capacity to remain calm, adaptable, and solution-oriented. Importantly, cognitive flexibility can be taught and strengthened. Techniques such as perspective taking, actively trying to see a situation from another person's point of view, expand mental horizons. Exposure to diverse cultures, ideas, and disciplines also broadens one's mental toolkit, making it easier to adapt thinking when confronted with unfamiliar problems. Additionally, practices like mindfulness and reflective journaling train the mind to pause, reassess, and consider alternatives before rushing into decisions. Over time, these habits create neural pathways that make flexibility a natural part of decision-making, rather than something forced. The role of environment cannot be overlooked in developing this capacity. People who are encouraged to ask questions, experiment, and learn from mistakes are more likely to develop flexible thinking. Conversely, environments that punish failure or discourage curiosity foster rigidity and fear of change. This insight places a responsibility on educators, leaders, and even parents to cultivate spaces where exploration and adaptability are valued. By doing so, they not only improve individual decision-making but also nurture communities capable of thriving in an ever-changing world. Ultimately, decision-making is not about always choosing correctly. Such certainty does not exist. Rather, it is about making choices with the best available information and being willing to adjust when circumstances demand it. Cognitive flexibility ensures that decisions are not confined by outdated beliefs or narrow perspectives. Instead, it empowers individuals to approach life with curiosity, adaptability, and confidence in their ability to pivot when necessary. The educational lesson is clear: those who cultivate cognitive flexibility are not only better decision makers but also more resilient learners, leaders, and problem solvers. In the grand picture of personal growth, the ability to change one's mind, adapt to new realities, and embrace fresh approaches is not a weakness but a strength. Cognitive flexibility is the engine that drives this capacity, and decision-making is the arena where it proves its value. To develop this skill is to gain a lifelong tool for navigating uncertainty, transforming challenges into opportunities, and turning decisions into stepping stones toward a more empowered future. Equally important is the recognition that environment plays a powerful role in shaping the brain's adaptability. Surrounding oneself with positive influences, engaging in intellectually stimulating activities, and maintaining supportive relationships all provide the external input needed to encourage the brain toward growth. Conversely, toxic environments reinforce limiting patterns, making it more challenging to embrace change. Education on neuroplasticity thus emphasizes the importance of consciously choosing the environments and experiences that will nurture desired mental transformations. Ultimately, the science of neuroplasticity offers a hopeful message: the mind is not fixed, and the limitations we perceive are often illusions built from repetitive past experiences. With awareness, deliberate practice, and supportive environments, individuals have the capacity to redesign their mental frameworks and, by extension, their lives. This understanding shifts the narrative from one of helplessness to one of empowerment. It teaches that change is not a distant dream, but a biological certainty when effort and consistency are applied. The power to change your mind is, therefore, not just a motivational phrase, it is a scientific fact, rooted in the very structure and function of the brain.